Get ready to witness the worst possible way to cope with the loss of your pet as we venture into a remote part of cinematography. Welcome back, guys. It's Motion Recaps again. And today, we're covering the 2015 horror, Cat Sick Blues. Spoilers coming right meow. Ted recently lost his best friend and a pet, a cat named Patrick. This trauma triggers a mental breakdown, and he begins to believe that he can revive his dead cat if he kills 9 human beings. At night, he puts on his cat mask and gloves, and he ventures out to find new prey. Claire is an owner of a cat that became famous all over the internet, but one day, a crazy fan kills her cat by accident. Claire then goes to a support group to cope with the loss of her cat, and there she meets Ted, who becomes obsessed with her. Now, before we carry on with this hairy story, let me take a moment right meow to encourage you to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and hit that bell icon, because cats love bells. Alright, let's get on with the story. Cat Sick Blues. The movie begins with 2 friends getting high and watching funny cat videos. One of them even has a cat bong. Anyway, they hear a neighbor's cat making noise outside, and one lady goes to scare the cat away. She arrives on the rooftop and she hears a cat growling. However, to her surprise, a guy with a rubber cat mask emerges from the shadows. He cuts her head with a shovel and then he goes to pay a visit to her friend. After the cat man strangles the poor girl with a hose, he gathers the blood from their bodies. Then, he sits and relaxes to watch some motion recap videos. Looks like he was watching our recap of Fried Berry. The Catman then goes home, where he has a session with his favorite cat cam girl. We see that the guy has a painting of a dead cat on the wall, and then we even get to see the poor fella chilling in the freezer. Then we meet Claire, who's posting her cat videos on the internet, and she's getting millions and millions of views. Her friend Gemma shows up, and we find out that Claire's cat is sick. Gemma tries to be closer with Claire, but Claire only cares about the videos, as she's constantly talking about them. Gemma soon leaves, and then we see some crazy guy on the streets heading to Claire's apartment. It shocks Claire when she sees that an unknown man is at her front door. He explains, well, as best as he can, that he's a huge fan of her cat, and he even painted her. It's really abstract. Claire feels sorry for him, and she decides to let him in. They have a cup of tea, and she figures out that the guy is crazy. However, for some reason, she asks him if he wants to see her cat, and he's full of happiness when he hears that. The guy starts petting her, and he gets really excited. Claire warns him that he needs to be more gentle, but he doesn't listen. She tries to take her cat away from him, but the guy accidentally kills it and then throws it out the window. Then he assaults Claire, and we can see that her camera is recording everything. The crazy guy then leaves with it, but he forgets it on some bench. Then we see the Catman unmasked. His name is Ted, and he's going to see a special designer. The guy made gloves with cat-like claws for Ted, who's satisfied with how they turned out. Ted then shows the guy what he wants next. A strap-on cat penis. Yeah, sorry guys, but we're not going to show that to you, because if we did, you would never want to see us again. After some time, the order arrives, and Ted is more than happy when he sees how it fits. Claire then looks through her mail, and she sees a pamphlet for a dead pet support group. We then see Ted watching his favorite cam girl when he suddenly makes a cameo in her video. He kills her with his new gloves, and we find out that he brought a little souvenir from the shooting. However, Ted then browses through some adult sites where he finds a video in which Claire is assaulted. Then both of them visit the support group held by a woman called Blanche. She encourages people to talk about the loss of their pets. One man starts talking about the loss of his pet, and for the whole time, Ted is staring at Claire. The man finishes with his venting, and Blanche asks Ted to open up about his loss as the new member. Ted introduces himself and starts telling a story about his cat Patrick, whom he really loved. However, his wife was overfeeding poor Patrick to the point where he died. That's a reminder for you guys. Don't overfeed your pets. It's Claire's turn, and for some reason, Ted starts shaking when he listens to Claire's fresh experience. He goes to the bathroom, where he continues to have a seizure. He calms down, and he gets back to the others, where he starts to have some small talk with Claire. They talk about their recently deceased pets, and Ted reveals to Claire that he knows how he can revive his cat. Claire thinks that he's speaking metaphorically, and she doesn't have any idea that Ted is dead serious. Ted the Romeo asks Claire out, and she accepts his invitation. After a quick dinner, they go to Ted's place. Before they get in, Ted tells Claire to wait for a minute because he needs to tidy the room up a little bit, and then he hides all the evidence about his gruesome murders. The two of them then relax with some wine. Claire notices the painting of Patrick, and she starts laughing. She's lucky that Ted didn't figure it out while she's laughing, when he's acting dead serious. The two of them then have sex, and both of them are looking at Ted's mask the whole time. Claire because she's not enjoying the sex, and Ted because he's obsessed with Patrick. Then we see Blanche shopping, and when she sees a can of dog food, she remembers her dead dog. After a breakdown in the middle of the store, she goes back home to eat some dinner. Her house is full of dog statues. Her peaceful evening is then interrupted by Ted, who's getting freaky under her sheets. Ted slowly looks at her, and then he chases her down before he kills her with her dog statue. And whoa boy is he furious at her for some reason, because he keeps smashing her head in with the statue. Ted then gathers all the blood from her body, and then he takes her head off before leaving the crime scene in his car. The next day, Ted hides Blanche's head near a sewer, while calm acoustic music plays in the background. Then we see Claire, who finally threw away her cat's litter box, and she's ready to move on. Then she sits down to browse the internet, and she finds a video of her assault. There are tons of reactions to that video as well. People can be really sick sometimes. That night, Ted gets ready for some more slashing. He takes his cute backpack, and he visits a rave. He chills there for some time, and after the party ends, he sneaks into a motel room where 4 girls are sleeping. When I say sneak, I mean sneak comically like in old cartoons. He then stabs a girl in the stomach with his claws. Blood starts gushing out, and the girl's screams wake up the other girls. What's worse is that there's a really good song in the background that follows this carnage. Ted then slashes the throat of another, and the amount of blood that comes out of it is equal to 10 people. Ted then comically turns around, and he grabs a vase, which he smashes against the third girl's head. After she falls to the floor, Ted begins stomping her while his not-so-little friend is dangling around. Then he uses it to kill the last girl, and dear God, I have nightmares from that scene. Claire's just chilling at home when she hears the news on the radio about the murder of 4 female tourists. She doesn't pay too much attention to it until she hears that the suspect is tall and that he has a cat mask. Claire then remembers her night at Ted's place where she saw the cat mask. Ted gets back home, where he pours the blood of his 8 victims into a barrel. However, he needs one more to revive Patrick. Ted gets his frozen cat from the freezer, and he screams in its face before he dumps it into the blood. Claire then gets sick, and her nose bleeds before she passes out. Then she has a trippy dream of Ted dancing with Patrick. Ted goes out to find his last victim, and he invites a prostitute into his car. He acts all nice, and she doesn't have any idea what he will do to her. They go back to his place. The prostitute gets comfy, and she lights up a cigarette. Ted shows up ready to mingle, and he tells the poor prostitute that he wants to do something different. Oh boy, I wonder what. He rides her through the house, and when they get into the kitchen, he gets up and tells her to wait. Then he turns off the lights, and when he turns them on, we see him sitting on the fridge with the mask on. He jumps on her, and then he slashes her throat. The woman starts to bleed out, and Ted begins to walk around her nervously. Then he gets her blood, and he pours it into the barrel. Claire calls Gemma and tells her that she slept with a man who recently killed 4 girls. Gemma tells her to call the police. Claire hangs up, and she hears the doorbell. And that's right, it's Ted. He ties Claire up to a chair, and when she wakes up, she sees a barrel full of blood in front of her. Patrick is there too, taking a bath. Ted tells Claire about his quest of taking the 9 lives to resurrect his friend, but Claire tells him that he's doing this for himself and not for his cat. Ted tells her that it's not true, but Claire continues to talk about how he wanted to fulfill his perverse desires by killing women. Well, maybe it's true, or maybe it's not. However, Ted is a maniac either way. He forces Claire to drink the blood of his victims, but to her luck, she quickly manages to headbutt him and free herself. Then she takes Ted's glove and she slices him nicely. Ted screams and flees. Gemma shows up and she finds Claire lying in bed looking awful. She calls Claire's parents and an ambulance. They show up and see that Claire looks really awful, but she also looks like she's in the 9th month of her pregnancy. The doctor was asking if maybe she came into contact with some bacteria, and Claire tells him that she was sexually assaulted. She's then taken to a hospital, and she is getting worse every single day. Everyone's acting like she'll infect anyone who comes into close contact with her. One day, the doctor tells her parents that Claire's condition is stable, but there's no possible way for her to look like she looked before. Claire then goes to see a priest, who explains to her that she needs to accept her new look. Soon, Claire starts giving birth, and Ted shows up as support. Way to go, Ted. Claire gives birth to a weird creature that looks like a mix between a human and a cat. Ted gets closer to her, and he whispers that they will call him Patrick. To Claire's luck, it was just a dream. She frees herself completely, but she starts seeing Ted everywhere. She gets so scared that she ends up like her cat, but things get worse. People gather around to record her last moments. Ted gets back to his house, and he dies with Patrick in his arms. Then, we see the guy who designed Ted's gloves and the strap-on burning the evidence. We also find out that the guy who raped Claire hanged himself. Back at Ted's place, the police are gathering the evidence and they find a bunch of VHS tapes. They start watching them. First, we see Ted as a kid getting Patrick from his parents. Then we get to see the compilation of Ted and Patrick's videos. The movie ends there. And that's a recap of Cat Sick Blues. My goodness, that was weird. As always, share with us your thoughts in the comment section below. What did you think of Cat Sick Blues? Now that's all for today's motion recaps. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.